Denver police blocked the public from listening to their scanners, but call it transparency. Colorado's unclaimed property fund is a dumpster fire, and that's your stuff in the dumpster. The airport says the developers that have torn the place to pieces haven't met one deadline yet. What happens if they break up in the middle of the mess? And someone is setting traps that are catching humans. That's next.
The airport is publicly shaming the developers that have left that place a mess for the rest of us. DIA is threatening to cancel the renovation contract that is years behind and is over budget. Today, they told our Steve Steger those developers have not met a single deadline.
Besides construction materials, frustration seems to be building up behind those temporary walls at DIA. Today we got 2 more letters sent to the developer from the airport on Friday detailing a laundry list of issues DIA has had since the project began and how those issues are impacting passengers. Among the 28 problems listed, the airport accuses Denver Great Hall LLC of not meeting any project deadlines to date. That includes a deadline to get some Phase 1 work done around baggage claim and check-in areas, which the airport says is causing headaches for passengers. And they accuse the developer of failing to complete perimeter work, which caused water to leak from ceilings into baggage claim areas just last week. These letters came after the airport notified the developer of 2 breaches of contract. One is a failure to repair an escalator leaving the concourse train, which was damaged by a fire near the end of June. The escalator still wasn't working when I returned to DIA on Sunday. Denver Great Hall LLC, for its part, has called the airport's complaints mischaracterization, saying they've fully complied with everything. So what would happen if the airport and Denver Great Hall LLC were to break up in the middle of a construction project? A quick look at the contract indicates a lot of different options for termination. One may include the developer continuing work until a new partner is found. If these 2 call it quits, the contract says the airport and Great Hall partners would have a transition plan within 30 days. They would have to come up with one, but you can imagine what an absolute mess that might be, Kyle, because if you think about it, another developer picks up this project. Their engineers are going to try to work with those designs. The airport owns the designs, but they may want to retool those designs. So you can only imagine the kind of delays that would come with something like that. Hence why the airport is saying, we're just trying to get this thing back on track.
It almost reminds me of like 2 people who are living together and then they break up, but they have to stay living together to cover the rent until somebody else comes along, and that's ugly business. You don't want that.
And my favorite part is it just seems like they're just leaving notes on the refrigerator to each other.
Just tons of passive-aggressive
They're not
notes.
talking to each other. They're just leaving the notes behind.
But man. All right. Thank you, Steve. The Great Colorado Payback promises to reunite Coloradans with the money they're owed. Well, you know what they say, payback is a biscuit. New state audit we got this afternoon says that program is a mess. Says the state failed to notify 1.5 million people of unclaimed property since 2005. This audit says the state did not act on nearly half the claims filed, and that it took almost 2 years to pay back other ones. The Unclaimed Property Division is promising changes on its end. Still waiting to hear back from the state treasurer's office. They oversee the Great Colorado Payback. Denver police are blocking the public from listening to scanner traffic, and DPD's calling it transparency. It's an astonishing bit of Orwellian doublespeak. DPD already had encrypted channels for its sensitive communications when needed, but as of today, they all go private. Now, DPD is offering us, the media, a chance to listen in if we agree to the government's conditions on what we can report and let them come in here to examine our records. No. As far as we know, no major media outlet in Denver has been willing to trade editorial independence for access to police scanners. Investigative reporter Jeremy Hohol is here to talk about how this impacts what we're able to do in terms of communicating to everybody in the public.
Yeah, Kyle, let's put out a scenario on the table here that could happen very soon. Let's say a police officer shoots someone. We would likely hear about that incident on the scanner and quickly head to the scene to interview witnesses and cover the story, but we can't. We are now at the mercy of social media and the police department's public relations department to tell us about those incidents. How will that incident look through their filter? Our assignment desk this morning noticed the silence from our Denver police scanner. We knew this day was coming for a long time, but we weren't sure exactly when. 9 News and other local media outlets have been in talks with Denver police through an attorney to get access to that audio. It is crucial audio, not only for police accountability, but for public safety. People rely on us to tell them what is happening in their community, especially during fires, floods, and shootings, and anything that could disrupt the lives of our families and neighbors. The city says we can have the real-time audio, just as long as we agree to those certain terms, like giving the city access to our records, documents, books, and other records that are protected. The agreement does not get specific on what records, which is a big woe for us as a news organization. We need to protect our journalism, especially when it involves confidential sources and witnesses.
It's important to recognize that it's not as though journalists and media outlets are insensitive to protecting the public or protecting the police officers. Nothing could be further from the truth. Our position is that transparency and the fact that people have a right, there are public airwaves, people have a right to access that content.
So Denver is not the first city to do this. Nearly 30 cities have done this in our state. So what's next here? The Colorado Press Association, along with other transparency groups, say they will take this matter to lawmakers next year. And Kyle, this isn't just about the media not having access here. People living in high fire danger areas use scanners to monitor when they need to evacuate. They say the call they get from authorities sometimes comes in way too late for them. They'd rather listen on their own.
I think a lot of people try to keep an eye on what's going on in their neighborhood through those scanners. But all right, so we're not opening up the books here at 9 News to Denver police.
Not yet.
All right, come back with
Hopefully
a warrant,
never.
as they say. All right, thank you, Jeremy. More Coloradans have been caught up in the gray area between legal green and illegal weed, but this time it's some known names, known because of previous trouble. Eric and Ryan Jensen are the guys who sold cantaloupe contaminated with listeria years ago. You remember that? People across the country died, and farmers throughout southern Colorado were impacted by that. Well, then apparently the Jensens got into the hemp business. That's what their attorney says. Prosecutors in Kansas think it was actually marijuana, which is legal in that state. You'll remember that Eric and Ryan Jensen pleaded guilty in 2013 to causing that nationwide outbreak of listeria. They were sentenced to probation, and they were ordered to pay $150,000 in restitution. So we've been tracking a similar hemp case out of Ohio. Andrew Ross, he's from Aurora. He's back in court next month looking at drug trafficking charges, accused of transporting marijuana through Oklahoma. He insists it was perfectly legal hemp. We told you about the test results, which came back mixed. So Ross works for a company called Patriot Shield. They were the security detail on that large shipment of hemp headed for Colorado. Olinger Crown Hill Cemetery, 240 acres of dying grass in Wheat Ridge. That's at least what folks have written in to tell us. And they're curious why. In the heat of our summer, why would the cemetery stop watering? Here's Lori Lizarraga.
Mom's spot is over here, and it's just everywhere you look. It's just weeds, and there's nothing left of the grass. It's just not pretty.
Rick Smith has spent a lot of time here over the last 2 years.
My father worked very hard to be able to pay for this, and this is what we get, and no answers. It's not right. Something needs to be done.
The grass at Olinger Crown Hill Cemetery is dying. We saw one man bring his own water to the cemetery. Well, Rick and Lee are asking for a more permanent solution.
Mom would be proud of you.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
For these two, this grass is incredibly important.
My mother passed away from small cell lung cancer. She, 97 days from diagnosis to the day she passed away.
Now they visit her here a few times a week.
How about that, a weed?
So when the ground started turning brown, they noticed.
You know, if it was green and you could sit down without getting stickers in you and covered in weeds, but it's dirt. You can't sit down and sit and enjoy it.
Lee has asked groundskeepers. Rick has made calls to management.
And nobody could give me, hey, this is the problem, this is what's broken, and this will be fixed. And that's all, you know, that I think anybody really wants to know.
They say their girl deserves green.
Mom, I'm sorry and I miss you. Just water the grass, folks. Find a way to water it. Or tell us that it's not going to be watered. But don't give me stories. Don't give me stories.
I reached out to Crown Hill Cemetery today. They told me the irrigation system is broken. They said cemetery management is working on it and that they take full responsibility in maintaining a beautiful resting place for your loved ones. They haven't said, though, when the fix is coming or how long the grounds have been without water.
I think everybody imagines Riverside Cemetery in Denver, which after it lost its water rights just kind of turned into a moonscape. But I mean, at the end of the day, Laura, that's what people wanted. They wanted an answer.
Exactly. And we were able to call, and within a few minutes, we got a statement, we got their answer, and that's all he was really looking for. He made calls. He's been looking for, why aren't you watering my mom's grave?
Yeah.
So exactly right, Kyle. All he wants is an answer.
All right, and now hopefully fixed. Thank you, Lori. Someone who does not know how to Colorado set up a dangerous situation that could have killed one of our neighbors. You'd hate to think that somebody would do this on purpose, but that is how it looks. Somebody tied a rope between two trees in the Rampart Range area southwest of Castle Rock. The Colorado Off-Highway Vehicle Coalition says a guy they know was hurt when he rode into that trap. Right there at head level, they shared these photos with us. The guy broke his helmet visor but was not seriously hurt. The executive director of Cove CO, Jerry Aboud, says those traps are tough for the riders and the mountain bikers to see because they're weaving around, they're going so fast. He's hoping that hikers will watch out for them.
When it comes to that, where exactly would you slow down? How would you know where to slow down? These are not incidents that repeat themselves at the same location. If you were not a mountain biker or an off-highway vehicle recreationist and you came across one of these booby traps, by all means, either call Forest Service or take it down.
U.S. Forest Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife did investigate that trap, but this is nearly impossible for them to figure out who in the world put it up.
A small business only lasts 1.5 generations, so I was trying to get it to 2.
And they're clearly doing something right if they've lasted 2 decades in a rapidly changing neighborhood.
The people that frequent us the most don't live here anymore. We're like a destination spot for most people that comes through here.
And RTD explains how it names its rail lines next.
I was reading over the weekend that NASA plans to return humans to the moon by 2024, which will be 26 years before RTD completes its promised train line to Longmont. RTD's target date, 2050, is now 11,115 days away. So think about it like this, all right? So we go back to the moon. We build a moon colony, you got houses and factories and stores. Of course, there's going to be a moon hospital, right? A baby is born at the moon hospital. Moon baby grows up on the moon, I presume, graduates from Moon High School, and even then, RTD still will not have completed its rail line to Longmont.
Our next question is also about RTD. Jim was curious why RTD's W line goes to Golden and the G line goes to Wheat Ridge. You saying shouldn't it be the other way around? So, Jim, RTD says the rail lines are named for the rail corridors that they serve, not the city. So, W line is for west of downtown, N line goes north, A line goes to the airport. The G line, that name is an outlier. RTD says it's a reference to gold. 1850, guy named Lewis Ralston found gold in a creek in what is now Arvada. Didn't stay, he was like, cool, gold, and kept going to California.
So now somebody out there is thinking, all right, so I get that W and G line to the gold. What about the R line to Arvada? RTD was like, well, A line was already taken, and Aurora does have a bunch of R's in it.
No fair making weather follow that. All right, here's a live look outside. We've got partly cloudy skies, a little bit of a gusty wind from storms that were to our south now dying out. We earlier had a funnel cloud reported just outside of Colorado Springs. That storm now losing its energy and intensity, and we are seeing it fall apart. It'll continue to do so through the remainder of the evening. We'll stay dry here in Denver, Fort Collins, and Greeley. Eastern Plains still dealing with some storms. These guys are staying put. So we have new flash flood warnings that are in effect for Kit Carson and also Cheyenne counties until 9 o'clock tonight. These storms nearly stationary, producing some hail and some wind with them as well. We do this all over again tomorrow, although the risk for severe weather is a little bit lower for us. We'll just get some general thunderstorms popping up in the afternoon. Likely for Denver, that's after 4 or 5. Look for some gusty winds and some brief showers. Temperatures tomorrow in the 90s. Cooler weather arrives by Thursday with highs then back in the 80s.
Thank you, Becky. All right, what do you say? Let's play some What Do You Say? Our viewer Eric wanted us to look into the name of a pair of mountains in Huerfano County. Most folks just call them the Spanish Peaks. That is their native name, starts with an H. We reached out to the Francisco Fort Museum in La Veta to ask, what do you say?
Wahatoya, like 4 syllables, Wahatoya. which means breasts of the world. People say, what's Wajatoya? And so they get that wrong. And also, there's two L's in it, so they think, what's Jahatola? And so we get that, but the L's are silent too.
The Wajatoya is a real popular place for people to climb and hike. One of the peaks is almost 14,000 feet. The other one is 12,000. They're real and they're spectacular. All right, what place name pronunciation have you always wondered about? Email next at 9news.com or give us a shout with the hashtag HeyNext.
A neighborhood cafe stands strong in Denver's 5 Points.
It's scary. At one point, there wasn't any businesses around here. It was like, whoa, are we going to be next?
After 20 years, they're ready to celebrate with the people who have helped them build a home. And sometimes a driver deserves a pass when they cross the line. This isn't one of those cases. That's next.
Denver's 5 Points neighborhood was built on jazz, and it was fueled by supper clubs. 5 Points is the heart of Denver's soul food scene. Restaurants like Welton Street Cafe, it's managed to hang on for decades. Our Byron Reed stopped by as the owners used their off day to get ready.
Fatima Dickerson knows all about commitment.
Welton Street Cafe is a part of my family.
She's been working in her parents' restaurant for almost all of her life.
I was 12 when we moved here. You know, growing up in a restaurant, my parents have always been in the restaurant. So in order for me to be around my family, I have to go to work.
Fatima and her twin brother Fatim took over the family business about 10 years ago, started by their parents in 5 Points.
In Denver, we had a few barbecue restaurants and catfish, but I fell in love with greens and yams and cornbread fried chicken. Nobody was selling that.
The Dickersons have been serving families for years.
Everything is tweaked island way, I'm sorry.
Sometimes just not sure how long they would make it.
Oh, it's scary. At one point, there wasn't any businesses around here. It was like, whoa, are we going to be next?
The restaurant has played an important role in the history of the neighborhood. And now this family is preparing to give back.
So tomorrow night is our 20th anniversary as Welton Street Cafe. I'm very grateful for the customers because we need them. I think celebrating 20 years as Welton Street Cafe allows us to give thanks to them.
Fatima and her brother will be celebrating a milestone for their patrons and keeping a long-lasting promise to their parents.
It feels remarkable because I watched them struggle. I watched the struggle. I watched the good, the bad, the ugly, and just to get here and to say that we made it this far.
For next.
So I'm grateful for that.
I'm Byron Reed.
You're sure of that gratitude tomorrow night. Big party, music, free food for all the regulars. It's going to be great. We have an unusual case of line crossing for you and some feedback that, how should we say, encourages me to improve. We would not need as many parking spaces around here if everybody would take just one. We've heard from Next viewers who use handicap spaces, and they've told us without them they can't access places that other folks take for granted. So, especially frustrating to see a driver without a handicap placard or plate decide to take up 2 of those spaces at the Target in Silverthorne. You've been sending us these photos for a while, and that could be one of the more discouraging ones. Keep the photos coming, and please, folks, be better humans. Email next at 9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. Megan Fehrenbach writes in about DPD encrypting police scanners, saying it is no one's business as to what and where the police are at all times, especially when people start showing up to the scene. If you want to know what they're up to, go on a ride along. And feedback tonight from Ross, who emails to say, my perception of Kyle is mostly negative because I perceive him to be condescending, pedantic, and smug. Mostly negative. So there's some good stuff. He just didn't list it. See you next time.